All right. Welcome, everyone. So this is the first, should I say, webinar or episode. I'm beginning a new project that's called Sovereign Self Radio. And I'll be doing demos like this one and also interviews with various people. Let me just open my window a little bit. It's a bit hot. And today, our first volunteer is my friend Essie. And I'm going to unmute you again. So welcome, Essie, and thank you so much for volunteering, being the first volunteer. So today we're going to do a real session. And, you know, for everyone watching live and also anyone who watches subsequently the recording, it's really a privilege to be a part of this and to witness somebody's process. So, you know, it probably goes without saying, but it doesn't hurt to just put it out there. You know, we want to come with a respectful energy. And if you're here as a witness holding space, you can practice staying in your compassionate higher self center, staying connected, staying clear and calm. And what pretty much happens universally is that when we witness these sessions, it triggers parallel parts in us. Sometimes it can trigger parts in us that are polarizing, reactive, all sorts of things. So your job as the witness is to just kind of work with that energy inside of you and just observe it and just sort of watch what's happening for you as well. So let me just review the contract with Essie. So because this is, you know, something live that we're doing with other people, the contract is that we're going to go in this like a real normal session. But if we get to some material that for whatever reason, any part of you just feels like, I don't really want to share this publicly, then you just let me know. And then there are going to be two options. We can either divert and work on something else, or we can end the session publicly, and then you and I, Essie, can complete it privately, like offline. Okay. And usually I don't feel like that, you know, my experience with public demos is that that never happens, but it's just very important to have it there so that there's never any coercion. This approach is very gentle. It's the opposite of coercion. So I don't want to set anybody up to feel like a pressure that they have to go through something that's just not feeling right for any reason. Okay. So that'll be our contract. And I think I'll switch it in a moment when we get started to speaker view. So it will mostly be on Essie and myself. Now, the other thing I want to do today, I don't know where we're going to go to, what's going to come up for Essie. So what I do in our school when we do the demos is I use little finger puppets to represent people's different parts. This just helps visually to keep track of things, mentally, psychologically. It just helps to keep track of all the different inner parts of us that come up in these sessions. Now, it can happen sometimes that just one part comes up and that's who we're working with the whole time. Like you can have your inner 8-year-old is really the one holding the burden and we just focus on that part the whole time. But it's also just as common that there's, oh, this is actually from another session. There's often different layers. So we'll be using this to just kind of symbolize the different layers of parts that we're going to be possibly going through. Okay, so let me just verify. So yeah, we are recording. Essie, do you have any questions or concerns, anything before we begin?
No, I'm ready.
Okay. All right, awesome. Okay, so the first part of the session is really super simple and straightforward, and I invite everybody to participate in this part. We're just going to do a very, very, very simple meditation to drop down into the body. So in the modern world, we're really seduced to being up here all the time, which is a realm that's exciting and entertaining, but there's not feeling here. So we want to switch into connecting with the body, connecting with how we feel. So all we're going to do is just very simple, deep breathing through the mouth or the nose, whatever feels right for you. Breathing through the nose usually helps to slow the breath down, but everybody do whatever feels right. So we're going to take really slow inhales and exhales. If it feels comfortable to close your eyes, go ahead and do that. And welcome, Monique. Thanks for joining. We're going to take really slow breaths and just drop awareness into the body. So have you actually felt how your toes are feeling today? Are you aware of your knees, your thighs, your hips? What's going on with the shoulders? So you can do like a formal body scan, or you can just even relax back even more into the witness and just witness what is coming forward from the body. Now at this stage, we're not trying to shift, heal, correct, interface with anything. This is just strictly observation and witnessing, okay? So we're going to do this for about 2 minutes, so I will be in silence. Just witnessing what's arising, and then I'll just briefly recap for Monique. So as a witness, you're just invited to hold the energy of the higher self during the process, and as we work with Essie as the volunteer, you know, things may get triggered in you, so your job is to just kind of hold space for any inner children of yours that are coming up, and we're going to just keep this nice higher self energy of compassion and courage and calmness, and just kind of circle Essie with that energy. So right now we're just doing an introductory meditation to shift out of the mental realm and just reconnect with the body. So we're going to be in silence for a couple minutes while we do that. And now Essie in particular, I want you to just really observe any thoughts, feelings, sensations, emotions. You could have visuals, you could have flashbacks, or you could just have a part that's like, oh my gosh, what are we getting at the grocery store later today? No judgment of any of it, just observe what it is. All right, Essie, take your time. And when you feel ready, I want you to just give me a laundry list of everything that you noticed.
I noticed a lot of thoughts about, I guess, for lack of a better word, career or money and relationships. Kind of a lot of, not scolding, but rehashing. I tend to rehash the same things over and over. So just rehashing. Um, I get stuck in a lot of what I think is unfair about things. So I rehash, I think, a lot of past grievances, even though some part of me has moved forward. There's still a part of me that's always still a small part. I wouldn't say a huge part, but enough of a part that is always kind of churning and a little dissatisfied with everything all the time. Yesterday was day 7 of a juice fast for me. So I feel pretty open, but I still feel that there are a lot of ways my negative intent is running my program more than my positive intent.
Okay. Okay, great. Excellent. Anything else?
I think this period in time is the most I've ever been in my body consciously. I have, I would say I am about 65% through a struggle with marijuana addiction, which is a way I use to escape. So I was noticing that one thought I had was I would like to be able to prioritize the things I really want to do in my life instead of falling into a despair that I kind of realize is a little narcissistic and then not doing much of anything.
Okay. Okay, this is great. Okay. And let me just finish the notes. Okay. So as we're working, sometimes I may be pausing to take notes, and it's literally just tracking what's coming up. It's not like some sort of secret Freudian analysis. And let me just, second, as we're going through this, there's no stupid questions and there are no bad clients. So if there's anything I'm saying or directing you to do that doesn't make sense or isn't clear, just let me know. And then probably even more importantly, as we're moving through the process, if you, Essie, find anything inside of you that's creating any form of resistance, this could be blanking out, kind of losing the plot, feeling tired, feeling like a gray cloud, like you can't get inside. There's like nothing there, numbing out, feeling fear, feeling really uncomfortable, anything at all. It's really important that you tell me that it's arising, because our job is to stop at that point and work directly with that part of you, because all those things happen for a reason. Nothing is random in our inner world. Everything has a reason and a purpose. So it's very important when that arises that you let me know so we can stop and help that part get what it needs in order to feel comfortable proceeding. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So the next stage, and those of you here as witnesses, you can participate to the extent that this feels comfortable for you. The next stage that I do is at this point, before we start to go in, I take some time to invite in my guides who happily work with me in this work all the time. They love doing it. So I invite you now, Essie, to invite in spirit guides, ancestors, gods and goddesses, beings from the David kingdom, fairies, orishas, whomever you know that you work with. But also, I like to leave the invitation a little bit more open, because in my experience, we all have guides who are there who we don't always know about. Sometimes they wait till a certain point in the timeline to like pop in and identify themselves for maximum impact. So the invitation I like to extend is something along the lines of, I invite in any beings that are willing and able to help Essie in her healing today, to help Essie strengthen her self-leadership, something along those lines. So you go ahead and just take a minute to do that now, Essie, and you just let me know when that feels complete for you.
Okay.
Okay, great. All right. So now we're going to shift gears and actually go in. So let me just look at the list of the, okay. So I feel like we should, it looks like there's kind of a polarity where on the one hand, you've got this part that is kind of saying, you know, I'm kind of over it, I've moved forward. But there's this other part that, as you described, is kind of circling over these past grievances that for whatever reason is just not ready to let it go. There's something unresolved there. So let's start by inviting that part forward, and let's see what happens. If you notice a different part coming forward, that's totally fine and normal. Just let me know. As we go inside, I kind of like to visualize it like an open mic. So there's a stage with a chair and a microphone and a spotlight, a bottle of water, and we're just inviting forward these parts of us, these fragments of our consciousness, to be heard and seen, to express themselves. So go ahead and invite forward the part who's saying, you know, basically, I'm going to assume it's a she. Correct me if I'm wrong. Sometimes we can have male or female or androgynous parts. Sometimes, you know, a cartoon rabbit can show up and you don't even know what it is. So, or it can be a gray cloud of smoke with no gender. But I'm going to assume it's a she. So this part of you is like stuck in what feels unfair. And there's like a rehashing, maybe even on the verge of scolding energy. And she's just really feeling dissatisfied. So let's invite her forward and take as long as you need. We got plenty of time. And just let her know that she's welcome here. And we're here today for her support, to support her, and to give her an opportunity to express whatever it is she needs to share or release.
She's here, but she feels like she's already done this.
Ah, okay. So interesting. So is this part holding both the feeling of getting stuck, but also the feeling that she's moved forward? This is one part?
Hmm. It's like being paralyzed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Really by anger, paralyzed by anger.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how does it feel for this part of you to be paralyzed by anger? What is that like for her?
Sometimes she's fuel, but it's not like it's like a fury. She
Mm-hmm.
comes in a fury, but
Mm-hmm.
then it's depleting at the contraction after the fury isn't there's nothing in it to really rebuild or nourish from, really.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the contraction after the fury is it this same part who like kind of contracts after she releases the fury? Or is there another part of you that comes and sort of imposes a contraction? How does it work?
I think in the fury, there's a sense of feeling whole.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think maybe the desire to burn things,
Mm-hmm.
burn false things. But then there's a like coming back to reality where false things rule the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then it doesn't feel like wholeness anymore.
No.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how does she feel when she comes back to this reality where false things are ruling? What words would she describe?
She wants to die.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's understandable. Yeah. So, does this part feel open to getting some help today to maybe shift this pattern, maybe release this energy, this pattern?
There's a there's resistance, like a lack
Mm-hmm.
of belief.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's a lot of, she holds a lot of pain, which
Mm-hmm.
is how she can be so furious.
Yeah. Yeah. So just let this part know that it's completely understandable if she's feeling like she just kind of is incredulous, like can't really believe that it's possible to shift out of this. Because if you haven't experienced something, it's kind of a stretch to believe in it, right? So let her know that what we're offering today is an actual direct experience of that shift happening, if she's open to it. And if she's not open to it, that's okay as well. She could share with us, what her concerns would be. Like maybe we can ask the question, what would it be like for her? Has she ever like even imagined what it would be like to not be holding pain and anger all the time? Like, what would that be like?
It's like a pain and anger she's holding for the collective. So she's
Mm,
not feeling compelled to give it up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's heavy. It makes sense. Yeah. So, what would it be like? We're going to do like an imagination game right now, okay? So, ask her, what would it be like if just magically we could transport to a universe where she could have her cake and eat it too, where she could release the burden of this pain and anger without sidestepping her responsibility to the collective, to humanity, to whomever. What would it be like if she could release this without being irresponsible? What would it be like if releasing this actually helped the collective to release it as well? What would that be like?
She's kind of going to sleep.
Yeah. That makes sense. So this is a big part. And this is a big, big energy. So it might be a little overwhelming for her. So as she's getting kind of sleepy, could you maybe ask her just a little bit more about what her concern is? What is she afraid would happen if she releases this? What is she afraid is going to happen to the collective?
Wow. Sorry.
It's okay. Take your time.
Very old, whatever the whole is. It's almost like she's done that. She's lightened before.
What happened when she lightened before?
She felt alone.
Yes. So I always want to be careful that I'm never making assumptions. So I'm going to sort of pull this apart a little bit, because I am already definitely sensing a very deep loneliness for this part. This is a very lonely process to be holding this incredible burden and somehow feeling that for a reason that feels very important to her, and maybe something she believes because of her experience, feeling like she just can't actually release it all the way. So that feels very lonely in and of itself. So she stated that she's done that releasing in the past. She's lightened before, and it resulted in her feeling very alone. And could she say a little bit more about why that felt lonely? I mean, did she feel like she couldn't relate to other people then, or what was the loneliness about?
She just cares too much, and there's not enough real things to motivate the desires.
Not enough real things to motivate the desires to clear this, or just to live in general?
To live in general.
Yeah. Yeah, that's totally understandable. This reality is not easy. And being around a lot of falseness and deceit and layers upon layers of trickery and fakeness is really exhausting. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm just wanting to get a little more clear. So I'm curious, is it sort of like I'm kind of curious about where she's getting stuck. So it's like she's damned if she does and damned if she doesn't. Is that kind of what it is, or?
A bit. There will be moments where there is inspiration,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not, there's no way to sustain it, or there's not enough knowledge or awareness around how to sustain.
Okay, I see. Yeah. So would she be willing to give us a chance today to provide an opportunity for her to connect to a level of your being that has infinite power to sustain anything? Mm-hmm.
It seems like a myth. It's like you hear about these things, but where are they in 3D? I don't live. I get that it's all this stuff people say, but I'm not here to. I want to feel it. I want to know it's real. I don't want to have a concept of it.
Sure, because concepts can be cons.
Oh my God. Something like released in my neck.
Okay, great. Great. All right, so give yourself a moment to just breathe through that shift.
Oh, she's really mad.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's understandable. And sometimes parts can be reluctant to let go of anger because anger has a lot to do with protecting boundaries, and in this world where, yes, all is one, but I mean, if I eat food, that's not filling your belly. So there's also boundaries in this reality, and anger is a very effective way to, delineate boundaries. And if this part is aware of how much nonsense is going on, it might feel kind of odd to want to release that, right? So I want you to let this part know that regardless of what shifts we do today, nobody can ever take away her ability to be angry. We have no interest in taking anything away from her. We have no interest in taking away any of her powers or diminishing her abilities in any way, shape, or form. What we're offering today is to shift her reality so that everything becomes more choiceful. So she can pick up the anger should the need arise, but she will no longer be in a situation where she's like forced to be burdened with anger pretty much no matter what. Does that make sense? Yeah, so just let her know that that's the offer here. We are never doing this work to get rid of any parts. The only time there's any extraction is when there's a foreign energy that's invaded your system, like a critter or an entity, but that's not her. So just let her know we're not interested in getting rid of any of her abilities. None of her wisdom will be lost. We're not wiping memories out. We're not going to leave her open and vulnerable, throw her back in the world like Pollyanna, like everything's great, right? So she'll still have all her sobriety.
She says okay, but she's scared because we have already experienced being cowed by forces of power.
Yeah.
So you're right. The anger is the reaction from the experience, those experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, and so let her know that not only does it make sense, like we couldn't expect her to be any other way. She's already had these experiences, so she's not feeling this way for no reason at all. This isn't random. Actual things happened in real waking life that she experienced that were kind of nasty and gnarly. And so for her to have fear is so normal. And just let her know that actually, just for her to admit that she's holding fear is really quite courageous of her. Like, it takes courage to be authentic, to admit those sort of vulnerabilities.
So what happens now is she's ready, but there's a part that is a new part of my inner landscape who is like, I'm not even too clear always on it. This part's more, like you said, like the cloud, but it's like it has lost, it's almost like lost all belief. Like the other part at least has some belief. This part has lost all belief.
So could we call this the hopeless part? Would that sound okay? Or does it not like that name? Or we could just call it the cloud?
Hopeless because it's not, it knows how to deal. It's more of I feel like it's like a virus meme that from the culture. Like it's kind of like apathetic and nihilistic. It doesn't have belief in anything really.
Yeah, so let's just take some time to get to know what's going on for this part in a little more detail.
I feel like I used to say it was just my saboteur, but it's I try not to dismiss it. It can get very, like, I feel like we were just about to start something that could have been good. And this, I have this, so this is a tendency of mine where I'll be almost at a threshold and I'll cut it off. And
yeah. So anytime a part, and this feels like a part of you, right?
It almost feels like a bug a lot of the times. Like having a bug when it's around. Like it feels real, but it doesn't. There's some part of me that always will kind of be able to know just that I've been triggered or I'm just in something when it comes up.
Okay.
I don't necessarily feel it. I don't know. It's new. It's a new. It's new.
Okay, so let's try some direct inquiry with this energy, and we'll sort of determine if it's a part of you or if it's something else. So just ask this part, what is it afraid would happen if it stopped doing this saboteur job? What is this part afraid would happen if it just stepped to your side and sat there quietly while we went through the process of relieving this other initial part of you who's holding all that pain and anger for the collective? So we're right on the precipice of this opportunity of helping this part of you who's holding this heavy burden of pain and anger and just profound loneliness. And then the saboteur comes in to cut it off. So what is the saboteur afraid would happen if we just went ahead and did this healing?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I think the idea of change feels like it requires too much energy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Energy that
Yeah.
my just body just physically just doesn't even have.
Okay. And from the perspective of this part, have you in the past experienced that healing takes a lot of energy and just burns you out? Has that happened before?
So I think in the past I had a lot of innocence, and I think in the last
Mm-hmm.
year or so my innocence got snatched. So I think
Mm-hmm.
before, if it was work, I wasn't noticing
Mm-hmm.
because of the protection of my innocence, and I without that protection, it's like that's what I lost was my innocence. As I get older
Mm-hmm.
and see more, it's harder to maintain that innocence. But I did, I think, longer than most people did for a really long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so does it feel like this saboteur is stepping in to somehow protect you from maybe more disappointment or more triggering? Is this part trying to protect that bit of innocence that's left?
Yeah, and also I think there's a bit of a reluctance to go with the flow of the change. Sometimes the changes are very accelerated,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot disappears in them. Still.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's real. So let this part know that it makes sense to have this hesitation. It makes sense to put the brakes on and say, oh, wait a minute, wait a minute. What you're offering today is shifting a major part of our inner world. And I don't know what that's going to result in. I don't know what's going to disappear from my life. I don't know what's going to change. I don't know how tired this is going to make me. Is that kind of the perspective?
Mhm.
Yeah. So let this part know this is a protector inside of you. Just let this part know that our work today is going to be very gentle. We're going to go slowly. And if this part is willing to give us a chance, we would invite her to sit right by your side. And if there's anything happening at any time in the process, we would invite her to jump in and interrupt us. What would that be like for this part?
It's like I have an army of warriors. They're all
Yeah.
like
Uh-huh.
jumping up and down.
Yeah. Well, let them know that they're welcome here. It's good that they're here. They're taking their job seriously, you know?
Okay, we're just about ready.
Okay, well, you tell them they can take their time. And again, to not just the saboteur part, but the whole army of warriors. They're all invited to interrupt us at any time. If even a smidgen of energy is going to the left and they don't like it, we would invite them to interrupt us. And here's the thing. We can't stop them from interrupting us anyway. Okay, so the invitation's a formality. It's really just
Oh,
me acknowledging their power. So we're
okay.
not taking away the power of the warriors or the saboteur. We're just asking their permission to give us an opportunity to show them something different.
Okay.
Okay. So I want you to really pause now and just show them some very deep appreciation because they've been busting their behinds to protect you while you're incarnated in the Kali Yuga, where it gets very nasty and very messy. So just really send all these protectors inside of you just a deep, profound appreciation and recognition for this challenging job they've been doing, and they've obviously been taking it very seriously. Okay, beautiful. So again, just invite them. They may want to sort of sit in a semicircle around you or sit by your side. And then just make sure that you're still connected with your breath. Seems like you're doing a good job, like feeling what's happening in your body. So just make sure you're connected to that. And take your time. We have plenty of time. When you feel ready, go ahead and reconnect to the first part we were working with, who's just really holding just this immense pain and anger that she's reluctant to give up all the way because she's holding it for the collective. And, you know, I happen to know your human design. I know you're a left angle. So you are here clearing collective stuff. So really validate that for her. She's not imagining that. That is very real.
I feel like a cracking in my heart chakra.
Yeah.
She's like a angry teenager.
Yeah. 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 Well, her anger is welcome here. She's welcome here.
I think just to give you some of my personal history, since I didn't get to have much of a rebellion in my home, she's like a very prolonged form of protest against a lot of things from my home. And so she, I feel like that's what makes her a little tricky, is she has like wisdom that wasn't allowed to be seen and expressed, but it's still coming from a reactionary stance. So I think that's where the gap is a bit.
Yeah.
Or where she can get caught up on focusing or like harboring on things.
Yeah.
Because there was no initial what you're doing for her, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, so let's just pause and take a moment to acknowledge that, because that you know, that it's a very simple thing to say those words, but that's actually really heavy. You know, to be a teenager who's you know, got a certain level of awakeness, and to not be able to express that, to not really be seen, to not be understood. And then where do you put that energy? This is the thing. When we're working with these inner parts of ourselves, you know, we're a closed system. If the anger can't be expressed and heard and validated, it has nowhere to go. It has nowhere to go.
Well, I think that links to the prolonged marijuana abuse.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, I mean, ganja, it can illuminate certain things and cover other things. So we kind of have to be real with ourselves about what we're using it for. Yeah. Yeah, so let's also just take a moment and let everyone in your system know that it's totally okay, no matter how much weed you've consumed up until now, it's all okay, because this was your system doing the best it could in a no-win situation.
That's hard to accept.
Yeah, so who's in there who's having a hard time accepting that? Somebody is.
I just think it's like the voice from my family of origin.
Mm-hmm.
They're highly, so I'm from very highly functional people, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that would be seen as not the best choice, I guess.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's this part of you that picked up on your family of origin had a, like a belief or perspective that sort of cannabis, ganja, it's sort of opening a door that has a possibility of leading to kind of not being effective, right? Not being high achieving. And so some part of you held on to that. And at the end of the day, it really doesn't even matter objectively. Is it true? Is it false? I mean, we can't even make a generalization because everybody uses it so differently. But something in your family of origin, there was this strong belief like, okay, there's a taboo there because we value being functional and achieving. Is that right?
It's, yeah, and just my own experience with being caught in the loop with it.
Okay.
I track what it does more now. If I
Yeah.
do decide to engage, I've like I said, conquered, I feel like a large part of it. But if I do engage and I track it, I still am left feeling like I don't know why I smoke this, because when I am tracking what it's doing for me, it's not giving me optimum benefit anymore. So what I notice it will do is it will darken my thinking, and it helps me. It's a form of hiding for me. I already know that. It's a way to hide.
Yeah.
I think so. I am ready for what you're offering. I mean, you know a little bit about me, Michelle, so you know I do a lot of ceremony work. So I do have a lot of actually different moments to kind of have rebirths. And so I guess there's just a part of me that knows it's kind of like the misconception about cutting cords. Like people think, oh, I'm going to cut cord. You know what I mean? Like these things are a practice. And I think that is where I'm having trouble finding my sustenance, is like, there's not, I mean, you can't be here with me and tell me to do my practice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like just, so I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Like it will sometimes boil down to just those two basic choices. Am I going to do my practice or am I going to smoke weed? And a lot of times I'll pick the weed, even fully knowing that it's not really doing anything.
Sure.
I mean, it's doing something, but you know what I mean? Like when I'm tracking it, it's not even really lighting me up or illuminating.
Right. So could I offer just a perspective to the part of you that's kind of grappling with this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So let her know everything she says makes sense because it can do all those things, including the things that your family of origin, their perspective, that is valid. This plant is strong and it can work strong in all different directions. They say that Shiva smoked weed to call the demons, which he then slayed. But if you don't know how to slay demons, you might be a little bit sober about your cannabis use if you don't know what you're doing, right?
Right. Okay.
Now, in a more personal note for you in particular as an individual, I just like to offer this perspective to this part of you that's grappling kind of like with a judgment of your use of the ganja. So what is wrong with a part of you reaching for weed to hide or to avoid practicing? Is it possible that sometimes this part of you is doing that because it's feeling overwhelmed, or it needs a break, or maybe it needs to hide for a moment. And it just doesn't know another way to do it. So if you're holding, let's just review everything you shared with us today of what's being held in your system, right? This angry teenager who has relevant, valid things to express that can't really fully get processed out. She's in this loop, and then she's in a world that maybe can sometimes receive it and maybe sometimes cannot. And this has been happening for years. And then she's sort of like, banging against a wall, getting exhausted, then also very lonely, and then maybe not sure who can be freaking trusted out there. So maybe I just need to hide.
Oh, Michelle, I feel exposed.
Yeah. And how does exposure feel? How does it feel?
I mean, I'm wild, so I don't, part of me doesn't care. Part of me is like, well.
Yeah, but a part of you, yeah.
I mean, it feels nice to have it so summed up. I mean, what we've just summed up took me like years of other processes to identify,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
you're
it feels,
doing a great job.
yeah, it feels like, oh, okay, I'm getting somewhere, sort of.
Yeah, so I mean, what would it be like? What would it be like to have the part that reaches for weed, either reach for weed or not, but to not be in judgment of it? What would it be like to reframe that part as a protector inside of you who's reaching for the weed because that's the only way it knows how to either, number one, hide, or number two, put the brakes on these practices, because I know the practices you do are extremely powerful. So is there possibly a polarity where one part is like, we're going to do practice every day for 6 hours, and then another part is like, fuck that, man. Where's the weed?
I mean,
with neither part being wrong or right. So we're dropping the rightness or wrongness, and instead just examining what's the intention. So the part of you that's judging the weed, her intention is, I want Essie to heal. I don't want her to hide. I don't want her to skip out on these practices that we know have some juice that help. And then the other part is like, damn, that part is so gung-ho. Doesn't she realize the effect this has on her nervous system? We need to rest. Let's just get blown and, do whatever you do when you get blown. Right? So both of the parts, one part is trying to heal you. The other part is trying to regulate so your nervous system doesn't get blown out. So it blows you out a different way.
Yes.
So what would it be like to just recognize that both of those parts are actually allies trying to work through a quagmire of a situation, doing the best that they know how? What would it be like to just recognize that these are two lovely little parts of you? I don't know what age they are, but I guess that they're a lot younger than you are, right? And they're just trying to work through this energy.
Yeah, okay.
If there's another part though that has something, it's okay to be contrarian. It's okay.
That's the thing. I was like raised to be a contrarian. So part of my practice is having to know when it's enough,
Yeah. And so maybe the gung-ho part is understandably super excited about keeping you on track, discipline, let's do these practices. And then another part is like, do you understand that we just like traveled to 5 different galaxies this month? Like, can we just chill the F out?
Yeah, I think there's just this theme of not doing enough
Mm-hmm.
in my life. Like, it's like, yeah, there's just the split. There's the part that is consciously slowing down and simplifying my life. And
Yeah.
I already don't. I'm a hermit. I'm already not doing much. But there's this other part that I can't always tell if it's a real motivation, me wanting to produce and have ambitions.
Mm-hmm.
So this is my, like, but
Mm-hmm.
then my mind's very clever. Is that real, or is that me talking myself out of living?
Right. So what, so would it be okay to find out today?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so let's just find out. So the part actually she knows. So, and again, correct me if any of the parts aren't she's. So let's just find out how old the second part you mentioned, who's like a what could I call her? Trying keeping you on
Saboteur
track.
part.
Oh, the saboteur?
Is that what you? That part? I'm
No,
asking.
I'm
Oh,
asking about the part who you're like, I don't even know if this is real, the ambitious part. Could we call her the ambitious
oh,
part?
sure. She's like, yeah, she's the producer. She
The
wants to.
producer. Yeah. Yeah, producers are important. We want to produce stuff. We want to have experiences. We want to expand. But let's just find out. So let's start just by just gently, just first let her know that she's welcome here.
Okay.
You're excited to get to know her better. And that we see that she has this beautiful intention. She wants to grow you and expand your life. But let's find out. First, let's find out how old is this part?
This part's not of age. It's like, I think this part lives in a utopia, kind of, or like
Mm-hmm.
in an ideal plane.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But you can't see what age she is yet? It's okay if you can't.
She's an adult. She's not a
Yes.
child. Yeah.
Okay. So adult like early 20s or
Hmm. Mhm. Never thought about her age.
mhm.
That's funny. She's
Mhm.
like 50 something.
Mhm. Okay. That's funny cuz I was getting this hit that she's like old. Yeah. So she's old but young. She's it sounds like she's still you say she's in this utopia so she's holding the innocence somehow.
Right.
Yeah. So let's just find out how long she's been doing this job.
Of producing?
Yeah, of holding this energy of like being the producer and trying to kind of encourage you to produce.
Oh, I think she's just one of my tapes that I run.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe let's go from a different angle to just kind of determine. So could she show you the first time she started doing this job in your life or one of the best examples of when she had to jump in to be the producer?
Oh, Michelle, we've always had to produce.
Okay. What happens if you don't produce? What would
Oh,
happen then?
you're not really existing.
Wow. So these are high stakes. It's like you got to produce or there's like annihilation almost. Or is it softer than that?
It's like you're just there. You're not really relevant to anything or anyone.
Mm, wow. That could almost be worse than annihilation because then you're just sort of hanging on. So either you produce or you're irrelevant. That feels pretty heavy. That feels like a lot of pressure.
It is, but you gotta keep trucking,
Yeah, because you don't want to be irrelevant. So what happens when you're irrelevant? What does that feel like?
Actually lately we've been dabbling and feeling okay and being irrelevant, and it's not a bad feeling. I think it's sort of going against the grain. Well,
Okay. And going against the grain, for her, when she's speaking of this, the grain meaning like what the collective is doing, or going against the grain like in a smaller sense, like in your intimate world or in your relationships with your family of origin?
I think the collective. I think my intimate world feels okay if I give no thought to the collective. But that's not possible to do all the time.
Okay, so it sounds like maybe this part used to be more intense, and sometime in your recent history, she's lightened up a little bit.
Yeah, a lot's been shifting recently because we are tired.
Yeah. And let her know that makes sense, because just from what we've learned today in this session, there's a lot of intense energy that you're holding in there that's kind of rumbling in the system, cycling, and that's exhausting.
It's also because in a way, this is the first time we've had all of our energy. So there's also the learning curve of taking care of it properly, I guess.
And when you say first time you've had all your energy, could you say a little more about that?
Well, I grew up pretty disassociated, so that I'm functional. So it's not like my life's gonna fall apart.
Sure.
I'm gonna be able to get money and glamour and do things. But really there's a split. So the split's what I've been mending. Sorry, the last few years I've been in somatic school. So there's been a lot of my energy coming back to me.
I see. Okay.
But it has been a little reason why my adrenals, I have like a bit of adrenal fatigue from just all the processing and all the returning of the energy coming back.
Okay. So now this makes even more sense when it comes to the polarity between the part of you that judges the weed and the part of you that reaches for weed, because you have been going through this really immense process that on the one hand is bringing results, but on the other hand, takes a lot out of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like the producer, am I correct that she's the part of you that like kept you on task even as massive parts of you were dissociated? Is that correct?
Right. And so
yeah,
she's like on disability right now or something.
Yeah. So I'm curious, the part that we're calling the producer, does she like her job?
So I'm so sorry this is so slow, you guys. I feel like this is so slow.
No, it's not slow at all. Don't worry. This is very normal.
Since I come from a life with a lot of control, even though I like idea of choice and the idea of this sea of like, I don't know, the unmanifest that's available for me to grab if I want to. Since I grew up with so much control, I it's, I guess it's like a form of like a Stockholm syndrome. So it's like I now have all these things that stop me. Like I don't need my abuser from the home to be stopping me now. Like I've developed all these ways to stop myself. And so I think, so that's where I get, it's not real. I'll have inspiration. I'm into things, but then I'm wondering, but then I'll feel a need to like perform them or monetize them or show. For some reason, I feel the need to have to demonstrate something. I mean, I would like ideas. I don't know. I think I'm getting lost in myself. I think, I don't know if I've actually ever produced anything for myself by myself.
Wow. Wow.
Okay.
So the producer part has been producing stuff, but it's kind of been like other people's agendas and energies that she's been kind of.
Yeah, like I grew up as a trained opera singer, very young, which was not my choice, and pianist. So I have all this stuff that makes people feel like ooh, but there's no ooh in it for me, really. To me, it was just another task that I was to be doing. And so I always kind of, it's funny, I used to call myself like the talented slacker because I literally have not done anything for myself where I've like rallied myself for myself. I've never experienced that. I've only done it for a teacher or someone in a position of power.
Yeah, so how does that make this producer part feel?
Well, so like I said, I'll have inspirations that are legitimately mine, but there's no sustenance to it.
Okay.
Like, I don't know how to invest in myself. I'm very good at motivating and investing in other people.
So for this part of you, if you were, let's just say somehow you could magically find the gear to switch gears and start investing in yourself, what would that feel like for her? What would it be like for her? I mean, she's obviously like a formidable, producer. She's succeeded in doing all these things with these sort of external authorities motivating it, right?
Right.
So what would it feel like to her? Can she imagine what it would be like to switch gears and put that same amount of energy and force into something that was exciting for you?
So we like that idea, and then I think we get bogged down feeling like we're like behind or stunted in something.
Okay, so would it be all right if I just do a little bit of a sidestep right now to give her some human design information?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So is this part aware that you're a 6'3"?
This is part of
And even if she is, does she understand the process of the 6th line?
I think intellectually it all makes sense when I think that's kind of like, well, and
Yeah, so just to give it a little more than just intellect, let me put some feeling behind it. So the 6 is here to bring a mutation. It's on a very different path than any of the other profile numbers. And it's bringing a very big mutation that, number one, no one else can model for you. The 6 is the role model who can't really copy anyone else. Okay, so there's that challenge, first of all. You can look outside for role models, but there is no other SEs, so nobody can really model it for you, number one. Number two, the process of this mutation takes a very long time and makes you a late bloomer. So now I know there's plants in this world that like they produce magnificent flowers like once every 30 years or something. Have you heard of these things?
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. So that's just part of our reality that we're in, that, you know, there's rose bushes that produce roses every year, and a rose is beautiful with nothing else needs to be behind. The rose is beautiful as the rose. But then there's other things in the garden that aren't on the same time frame. They're working through a different process. So they may not produce flowers every year. But when the flower comes out, it's so different and magnificent and just like otherworldly. And wouldn't it be sad for that plant to feel like it was lesser because it's not creating roses every year, when what it's creating is just something different that's also very beautiful and very needed? The 6 cannot really be itself fully until age 50. So it's funny that this producer is 50. Yeah. So just let that kind of sink in. So the 6 is mechanically designed to be a late bloomer. And only because many people don't have this information and aren't aware, even well-meaning people are going to feel the potential of this 6 energy and try to pump up your kundalini before your Saturn returns, just like all these other stars that are getting pimped out in this reality, right? But that's not what the 6 is here for. Incidentally, those other people aren't here for that either. They're getting tricked into that. So no matter what profile you are, you aren't supposed to be pumping through your kundalini. It's a slow process that's very important and very misunderstood. Yeah. So when the caterpillar is in the cocoon, we don't yell at it. We don't say that it's just a piece of crap and irrelevant because it's not flying around with pretty wings right now, right? We allow it to stay quiet in its process, going through what it needs to go through, because we know that it's worth it. Nobody can look at a butterfly and say, oh, that's not worth it. Nobody can say that. Yeah.
My throat's on fire.
Mm-hmm. So how is the level of his intensity? Are you doing okay?
Yeah, but you're intense.
You're doing a great job.
Like something just melted old, you know?
Yeah.
I usually have very violent processes, so I'm kind of happy this is this.
Yeah. Yeah, you're doing really well.
Oh. Yeah, something's melting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're also a manifester. So, you know, there's this incredible potential and this manifesting energy that you have access to all the time. And somehow these programs got in, and the throat, which is the center of manifestation, was just holding some crazy knot because people were trying to pump you. Look, we know you got it in you. Why don't you just do it? Well, my wings aren't done yet. If the wings aren't done forming yet, they're not done forming yet. What's the agenda of rushing? Right? Yeah.
Well, you know, the other rub is that I trim pot for a living, so.
Oh, you do? Oh, so you're like a bartender who's alcoholic. Yeah, I dated that guy. Yeah, I'm gonna quit drinking. And I go get another job at a bar. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I feel very oh, I hurt my hip yesterday. I get very shy. I feel very seen by you, Michelle. I want to thank you. It's interesting because I'm realizing that because I do a lot of work, so it's interesting to do all this work and then be able to piece it together, you know.
Yeah.
To take the time. I think, like you said, I'm always barreling through so much that I don't take the time to do what you're doing right now, kind of like flushing it out all the way. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, this work is just about integration. It's just integrating, and everybody has fragments because, you know, we're being raised by people who are themselves confused and holding burdens and traumatized, and their nervous systems are jacked up. And then we've got all this false programming coming in. And then to protect us and for our benefit, you know, adults who really do love us and really do mean well, they're putting all this stuff on us. Oh, if we just put a little more pressure, we know she's got it in her, or whatever the story is, right? So we split because the body can't just stay in untruth like that all the time. We have to split off. We have to like parts of us take on the burden of, okay, well, I'll hold that pain over here so that you over there can go to school today and not cry all day. So that's how we're going to get through this, guys, right? So, you know, from my perspective, any parts, I mean, even people who are using heroin, that's just a part of them doing the best they can to deal with the challenges of embodiment at a time of great ignorance and chaos, you know? And it's so pervasive. We're just used to it because that's like the baseline. That's like the water. If we were fish, that's just the water that's coming in and out of our gills, you know? So how do you manage? It's all these little children inside of us, or sometimes in your case, a woman who's older than you inside of you, right? Just trying to hold it together, you know? So you're doing a great job today. So I just want to kind of check in with your parts. Like, how are you feeling energy-wise? Do you feel like you can do some more, or is that good for today? Like, how are you feeling? And take your time and really feel.
It feels good, I think. Yeah, I think this is good for now. I mean, I love to push this kind of stuff, but I've been learning it.
Yeah, so would it be okay? Could I just speak to the part of you that's whose job it is to push? Would it be okay if I speak it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just want her to know that I totally understand why she wants to do that, because we got results today, right? Something happened that was really effective and helpful. And I'm sure that everybody who's been on the call has stayed on the call. So not only have you benefited, but the rest of us have all benefited from this, right? So I'm just wondering if she would be open to a little bit of homework around kind of recalibrating just her baselines of when enough is enough. Because I'm wondering if she's so gung-ho that she's missing like the magic and power of which you already are doing, which is immense.
That is true. Yeah. Yes.
Can she hold that? Yeah. And you know, there will be future opportunities to do more work. You know, this is not the last day, and you know, the doors don't close forever. But you did a lot of really, really good work today. And you so generously allowed the rest of us to be here witnessing that. So I just really want to let her know, like, I'm not just like, trying to butter you up. Like, all of this is real. And nobody's getting paid to be on here. So if that weren't the case, like, people would have dropped off the call, but nobody dropped off the call, right? So I just want her to really see the value of what you're already doing. And also just to let her know, like, the power of the rest cycle. And resting is also doing. Resting is also doing.
I feel like I'm always resting.
Yeah. Well, the beautiful thing is that when we're really aligned with the higher self, we settle into a place that is feeling more rested, because one of the qualities of the higher self is calmness. So some part of you is connected to that and is resting, but then these other parts of you have these jacked up programs from our modern world that say only hustlers are relevant. Only people who are smashed on the screens of televisions and movie theaters, or, the star of an opera, or whatever the program is, only they are relevant. If you're sitting centered in calm compassion, it's really nothing. When in fact, pure presence of self like that is more valuable than any of that other shit I just listed. All that other stuff is smoke and mirrors, and it's fun. Look, I mean, I'm also a 6'3". I love the entertainment world. I love expression. I love drama. I always wanted to be an actress and a dancer, right? I always wanted that. And then life was like, nope, we're going to make you do these shamanic studies because that's what we need you to do, which nobody sees most of that, most of that is invisible. And yet, being in restfulness, being in stillness, being in calm compassion, it's so powerful. You don't have to do anything. The people who are hustling and doing stuff, they're hustling and doing stuff because they've lost connection with their power. People in their power, they look very rested. They look very calm. They can kind of look like nothing's going on. Being at the 0 point is not showy. It's not showing off. It doesn't have to prove anything, right? And you have the capacity to carry that. Yeah. You are one of the most courageous people I know. And courage comes from the higher self. Real courage can only come from the higher self, because that's the part of us that's not actually stuck in here and has the perspective to be in that courage, right? The rest of us gets into the fear and all of the other stuff, understandably. Yeah, so I just want to let this part just give her the opportunity to recognize the beauty of what you bring already.
It feels good because I feel like all my little wounded children and my army warrior and my producer, they're all kind of like feels like it's like after ayahuasca ceremony or something. So just like a content, like true contentment.
Beautiful. Okay, so on that note, let's just formally extend gratitude and appreciation to all of these parts that showed up today. The teenager part who never got to rebel, who's holding this cycle of the anger. The part that's the saboteur. Then we had the duality between the part that's like, we need to smoke weed because we need to chill out, or whatever it says. And then the other part that's like, smoking weed, it's going to make us irrelevant and nothing. Right? That producer part is related to that. And they all showed up and they were all honest with us. They all had the courage to just really show us what's going on for them. And it all really made sense. They all made a lot of sense. So just showing appreciation to all these aspects of you who showed up today and did this magnificent work. Yeah. And then take a moment in whatever way feels right for you to just thank all of the beings who are with us from the other side of the veil. And take as long as you need. Just let me know when that feels complete for you. And those of you witnessing on the call, you can extend that gratitude as well. So, Essie, you really have permission to say yes or no. I'm wondering how you would feel about opening up the floor to questions, or do you feel like it's enough for today and you'd like to close now? And it's really okay either way.
I can take questions.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to go back to gallery view, and then anybody, you could either put a question in the chat or you can raise your hand. If you don't know how to unmute yourself, I would say put something in the chat. I can unmute you. But I'll just open the floor for a moment. If anybody has questions or comments or feedback or wants to share the impact this had on them. And in the meantime, I've learned being on both sides of this, both as a teacher and a student, that sometimes it can just take a while to even formulate the questions or the comments. So I'll give you guys a moment to do that, and then I'm just going to just give some commentary. So what we did today was, is a real session. And I'm very grateful to Essie for being willing to do this, because as you can see, it puts the person into a lot of their vulnerability. So what we did today was we worked with several parts, meaning like sub-personalities inside of her inner system, all of whom, as you could see, they're holding a lot of very intense stuff. But also you can see, because Essie has done a lot of work before this, and she and I have never worked together in this capacity before, she was able to track the parts, speak for the parts, feel the feelings of the parts without getting so overwhelmed that she got totally taken out, which can happen. So you can see that she's already cultivated a lot of her own, inner power and self-leadership and clarity. Today, we did not get to the steps. So what can happen, I won't even say normally, because every session is its own unique little adventure, right? What can happen is that if it were not necessary for all of these other parts to show up and get heard today, which is totally correct what happened, because that's what they needed, we would have stayed with that first main part, who's the teenager just holding like this immense pain and anger cycle that sometimes she releases and calms down, but then there's this loneliness on the other side. So she's like in a lose-lose feeling right now. What we would have done is we would have gotten permission to work with her directly and connect her with Essie's higher self directly, which is, which it's like the whole temperature of the room changes when you shift into that. So like if Essie were my client and we were to meet again in the next session, that's probably where I would suggest that we start. But again, when I go into sessions, I refrain from having an agenda, because then we get into a point where I'm like manipulating the client. So instead we open the floor, and if her teenage part were up again and ready to work, then we would do that work of connecting her to the higher self and doing what's called an unburdening. So in the unburdening, we'd literally go back into those teenage years where all that stuff kind of settled in the first place that couldn't be expressed for whatever reasons. And we'd allow her to really tell us the full story to the extent that she needs to. Sometimes parts, they want to tell you detail by detail. You know, I did this and my mom said that, and then I was not allowed to speak again and I shut down because of this, whatever the story is. Sometimes it's very important for the part to give you like a blow by blow. Other times they just sort of say, yeah, this is what happened in a nutshell. I want to get rid of it. And then we go to the next step, which is usually an alchemy ceremony where we help that part to unburden using the elements. Some people, like I have one client, every time I work with her, like Isis is there, Kuan Yin shows up, like she's got a crew that just show up and kind of do the work, and that's sort of her alchemy. Some people need a little more guidance. Some people, like, it just happens and all I'm doing is holding space. So when the unburdening happens, the beautiful thing is that all of the pain is expressed and released and transmuted through that process. And then that part of you is able to shift to the other side where they can take on a completely new role. And now they have space for new, fresh energy. So a part that is like terrified of singing may go through that process releasing, and then on the other side say, I want to be a singer now. So a lot of times what the parts hold is really just the false self, and then as the unburdening happens with the higher self present connecting, on the other side they get to take on the role that really is true and real and feels good for them. So that's just kind of like a little education. But again, today, what happened is exactly what needed to happen, because as Essie said, she was able to kind of pull these parts that are fragments, bring them together, let them each be heard. And then at the end, they kind of just naturally and organically were kind of together. Like you said, after like an ayahuasca ceremony where like everybody's loved up because we all had this beautiful experience. And that's exactly what needed to occur. So it's really important in this work to allow the client system to lead, you know, and sort of show us where we need to go, so that the facilitator isn't imposing an agenda, that the facilitator can never know better than the client what needs to happen. It's really important to allow that process. All right, so anybody have questions or comments or anything they'd like to share? And if not, you know, we can close. It's okay. You know, nobody's forced to speak, but I really appreciate you so much, Essie. This was really wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, and you know, in the coming weeks, you may start to notice shifts inside that also show up and reflect externally. So, you know, my inbox is always open if you ever want to contact me and share.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so for everyone, my, my second volunteer got injured in a rugby match. He lives in New Zealand, and his face got all smashed up. So we may do another one of these next week. If he's not feeling ready, then maybe somebody else will kind of cut in front in the line. So if, you know, if this was helpful for you, I'll be, you know, sharing this information again on Facebook. So you'd all be welcome to, you know, join as witnesses. But other than that, I appreciate everyone for being here. Thank you for coming and holding space. You guys were really lovely audience, and I know some of you a little bit outside of Facebook, so thank you for being here. And then Essie, anything else that you want to share or ask before we close?
No.
Okay. So I'll be uploading the recording. So if it helps you to watch it, Essie, you know, you can. In my personal practice, I have like hours and hours. When I do this work on myself, I used to record it just into a tape recorder, and I do have some videos. I have parts of me that have a really hard time watching the videos, but sometimes I do listen to the recordings. And it's interesting because at the time it felt really important to record it for those parts. But then when I listen to it afterwards, I'm always kind of like, we're done. So, you know, sometimes I think when you're doing it by yourself, to have that technology take the place of another human hearing you can be important. and everyone's different. Some people like to record their sessions and rewatch them. Some people don't. So there's no right or wrong. But before my chatty parts start to take over and just talk unnecessarily, I'll bring it to a close. And again, just so much gratitude for all of you. This was really a pleasure. Essie, you're marvelous. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle.
And happy Easter. Yeah, happy rebirthing.
Thank you. Thanks.
All
everyone.
right. Yeah. All right, beloved. So be well, and maybe I'll see you guys on the next demo.
Okay.
Take care. Bye-bye.